In 2022, one company was the undisputed king of India's tech boom, a global force in education technology valued at a staggering $22 billion. It was run by a charismatic founder, backed by the world's biggest investors, and its logo was even emblazoned on the national cricket team's jersey. That company was Byjus. Today, its valuation has been slashed by over 95%. It faces lawsuits from lenders, investigations by government agencies, and has laid off tens of thousands of employees. Its empire is in ruins. This isn't just the story of a startup that failed. It's the story of how a $22 billion mistake, a single, fatal belief, brought the world's most valuable education company to its knees. And it serves as a chilling warning for the entire tech industry. The story begins not in a Silicon Valley garage, but in the stadiums of Bangalore, India. Byju Raveendran, a gifted engineer and teacher, was packing arenas with thousands of students, all eager to learn his shortcut techniques for cracking India's hyper-competitive entrance exams. He was a rock star educator, and he knew he was onto something big. In 2011, he founded Byjus with the mission to revolutionize learning. The company launched its flagship product, the Byjus Learning app, in 2015. The model was brilliant in its simplicity, a freemium approach that offered basic lessons for free, with premium, in-depth content locked behind a subscription. The app was an instant sensation. It was visual, engaging, and made learning feel like a game. For the first time, high-quality tutoring was accessible to millions of students outside of major cities. Parents across India, obsessed with securing their children's future, saw Byjus as a golden ticket. Early investors saw it too. By 2018, Byjus had become a unicorn, a startup valued at over $1 billion. It had attracted funding from global giants like Sequoia Capital, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and Tencent. They weren't just investing in an app, they were investing in the narrative of a new India, powered by technology and aspiration. Byju Raveendran was the perfect frontman for this narrative. He was a teacher-turned-entrepreneur, a hometown hero who hadn't gone to one of India's elite engineering schools, but was now building an empire. The company was on a trajectory that seemed unstoppable. Then, the world changed, and Byju's rocket ship went into overdrive. When the COVID pandemic hit in 2020, the world went into lockdown. Schools shut their doors, and over 1 billion students were suddenly forced to learn from home. For the EdTech industry, it was the single greatest catalyst in history. For Byjus, it was like striking oil. Demand exploded overnight. The company claimed it added over 40 million new users in the first 6 months of the pandemic alone. The money followed. In a frenzy of investment, venture capital firms poured billions into the company. Byju's valuation skyrocketed from $8 billion in early 2020 to that peak of $22 billion by 2022. With a war chest of billions, Byjus went on a breathtaking acquisition spree. It was no longer just an app company, it was building an educational empire. In 2021, it made one of the biggest deals in Indian startup history, acquiring the Akash Educational Services, a legacy chain of physical coaching centers, for nearly $1 billion. It bought White Hat Jr., a coding platform for kids, for $300 million. It acquired Osmo, a US-based educational gaming company, for $120 million. The goal was clear: dominate every vertical of education, from kindergarten to postgraduate exam prep, both online and offline, in India and abroad. At its peak, Byjus was spending more than it was making. But in the zero-interest rate world of 2021, that didn't matter. Growth was the only metric that counted. But beneath the surface of this hypergrowth, a dangerous omen was emerging. Whistleblowers and media reports began to detail a toxic, high-pressure sales culture. Sales agents, known as counselors, were allegedly given impossible targets, forcing them to use aggressive and often unethical tactics to sell long-term subscriptions to families who couldn't afford them. Parents reported being emotionally manipulated, promised scholarships that never materialized, and locked into loans they didn't understand. The company that was supposed to empower children was being accused of exploiting their parents' deepest anxieties. This was the first sign that the mission of education had been replaced by a singular obsession: growth, at any and all costs. The single most critical failure for Byjus wasn't one bad decision, but the collision of its flawed strategy with a new reality. The company had made a $22 billion bet that the pandemic-fueled, all-digital education boom was permanent. This was its fatal mistake. As the world reopened in 2022, students started returning to physical classrooms. The intense, screen-heavy environment of lockdown learning gave way to a hybrid model. The frantic demand for online-only education began to normalize. For Byjus, the rocket fuel was running out. Suddenly, the company's gargantuan cost structure looked terrifyingly bloated. The expensive acquisitions weren't integrating smoothly. The massive sales teams were struggling to find new customers. The growth at all costs engine began to sputter, and the cost was astronomical. This is where the second critical failure occurred: a staggering lack of transparency. For a company of its size and valuation, Byjus was shockingly opaque with its financials. It was legally required to file its audited financial results for the fiscal year ending March 2021, but it failed to do so for an incredible 18 months. The investment community, the media, and the government all began asking the same question: what was Byjus hiding? When the results were finally released in late 2022, the numbers were catastrophic. The company reported a loss of over $577 million for that year, one of the largest ever recorded by an Indian startup. It turned out that an accounting change, which deferred revenue recognition, meant that the incredible growth it had claimed was not what it seemed. This was the tipping point. The trust that had propped up its $22 billion valuation evaporated almost overnight. The delayed financials were not just an administrative error. They were a signal that the company's leadership was either unable or unwilling to face the grim reality of its finances. The empire, built on a mountain of venture capital and aggressive promises, was revealed to be a house of cards in a hurricane. The consequences were swift and brutal. The company's auditor, Deloitte, resigned in mid-2023, citing the long delays in financial statements. A massive vote of no confidence. In the same week, 3 prominent board members from its largest investors, including Peak 15 Partners, formerly Sequoia India, and Prosus, resigned en masse. The message was clear: the people holding the money no longer trusted the people running the company. The valuation began to crumble. BlackRock, a major investor, slashed its internal valuation of Byjus from $22 billion down to just $1 billion, a shocking 95% haircut. Other investors followed suit. The unicorn had become a cautionary tale. Then the lenders came calling. Byjus had taken out a massive $1.2 billion loan in 2021 to fund its expansion. Now it was in default. The lenders took the company to court in the U.S., accusing it of hiding hundreds of millions of dollars. The legal battles became a public and humiliating spectacle. The human cost was devastating. To survive, Byjus initiated wave after wave of mass layoffs. Over the course of 18 months, an estimated 25,000 employees lost their jobs. The once celebrated engine of job creation had become a symbol of corporate collapse. The Indian government's enforcement agencies launched investigations into potential foreign exchange violations. The founder, Byju Raveendran, once the poster boy of Indian entrepreneurship, saw his personal stake and his reputation decimated. The brand that once adorned the jerseys of cricket superstars was now synonymous with scandal, mismanagement, and broken promises. The empire had not just fallen, it had shattered. The collapse of Byjus offers 3 powerful lessons for any entrepreneur, investor, or business leader. First, valuation is not reality. Byjus and its investors became obsessed with the $22 billion number, using it as a justification for reckless spending and aggressive tactics. But this valuation was based on a temporary market craze, not on sustainable profits or sound business fundamentals. It was a vanity metric that masked a deeply flawed operation. Second, growth at all costs eventually costs everything. The relentless pressure for growth corrupted Byju's culture, leading to unethical sales practices and a business model that was built to burn cash, not generate it. Sustainable growth must be balanced with ethical practices and a clear path to profitability. Chasing growth above all else is a deal with the devil. And finally, transparency is non-negotiable. Byju's 18-month delay in filing its financials was the ultimate red flag. It destroyed credibility with investors, regulators, and the public. In business, especially when you are handling billions of dollars of other people's money, you must be ruthlessly transparent, especially when the news is bad. Hiding from the truth only makes the eventual reckoning more severe. Byjus wasn't just an EdTech company, it was a symbol of ambition. But its story is the ultimate proof that an empire built on hype, fueled by unsustainable debt, and shielded by opacity, is destined to collapse under the weight of its own mistakes.